All right, everyone. Welcome to Tiger Talk Thursday. And we are at episode 72 of Transitioning to Life After Sports with a very special guest, Tim Holmes, on the call. Welcome, Tim.
Hiya, are you okay?
We're
Great to
very
be here.
excited. What's that?
Great to be here.
I know. And for those of you tuning in, I'm in Ottawa, Ontario, and you're where?
I am in sunny Widnes in the UK. So we sit between Liverpool and Manchester for the listeners that have no idea where I am. I'm in that area.
I love it. Well, former pro rugby player, rugby league player Tim Holmes had it all until a devastating neck injury at 24 ended his career overnight. The fallout: identity loss, depression, addiction, and a brutal battle to rebuild. Coaching and strength training gave him a new purpose, but he quickly realized that without mental well being, no athlete can reach their full potential. All the things we're going to dive into today. After stepping away from pro sports again to focus on family, he faced yet another identity crisis. This is a topic that I'm excited to dive into as well with you. But instead of staying lost, he turned his pain into purpose, helping athletes, students, corporate leaders, and even those in the prison system navigate life's toughest transitions. He's raw, he's real, and packed with game-changing insights. This is a conversation you don't want to miss. So let's dive in. Why don't we
Let's do
start?
it.
Yeah, excited to have you finally to connect. I found Tim on LinkedIn. I forget where or how. Oh, maybe another athlete. Anyways, so I'm excited that our calendars align today.
Finally, yes, indeed.
So let's just dive right in. Life as a pro rugby player. I mean, every kid's dream that's wanting to get on the pitch or
100%, 100%. And the way I actually found my way into rugby league wasn't the normal path by any stretch of the imagination. I played football. I was a football player. And just after school, the teachers say, as they do, we're a player short. Do you fancy having a game? So I said, yeah, and jumped on the field. And because of my background, not understanding really the game of rugby league, I probably looked at it a very different way to most,
yeah.
which meant that I then stood out. And there was luckily a scout there, and he asked me to go down, and that was it. Then I was on the path and on the scholarship programs right through. And
Actually,
it was
sorry, I
unreal.
love that you said that because I think I heard in a previous podcast that you were interviewed on, you talk a lot about your work ethic.
Yeah.
And would you say that was one of the qualities that made you stand out to the scout? Like the hunger and the work ethic that
To
you brought to the
to make me
team?
stand out to the scout, maybe not. I think it was the way I played the game differently. However, then turning up for my first training session, my work ethic is the only reason that I made it to where I made it. I joke quite a lot that I was that player that made up the numbers all the way through my career because people knew I could work hard,
Yeah.
and that has been, some would say it's just sheer stubbornness, but it was that striving to be the
Yeah.
best that I can.
Well, I love
Yeah,
that only because when I work with younger athletes, I always tell them like no one can take away your positive attitude and no one can take away your work ethic. You have skills and your skills are going to bring you to a certain level, but once you get with the best, what separates you even more so is your work ethic and your attitude. And the ones that stick around and the ones that do really well, they're able to hone in on those skills. So it sounds like you were quite the go-getter.
totally, totally. I was, and to the point that when was in the system, that was all I wanted to do, and I
Hmm.
would do anything to make it. Now, on reflection, certainly working with the athletes that I work with, when I'm then talking about a whole person approach,
Yeah.
you realize that so many times you hear so many athletes saying, I made all the sacrifices to make it. And often what they're missing is those sacrifices are actually the connections with people outside of the sport because you live and breathe your sport.
Yeah.
You turn your not turn your back on your school friends, but you're not socializing with them because you've got to sleep. You've got to get up early for practice the next day.
Yeah.
And it's those sacrifices that down the line there's got to be a balance, but 100%, I have no regret on the fact that if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have made it. So,
For sure. And there's also a reframe too, as opposed to sacrifice, is just discipline. It's discipline to achieve a goal, consistency and commitment towards what you're going after.
oh,
Sacrifice. I know the
completely.
younger kids, they're like, I missed out on my friends, or they're looking at Instagram now because they can see everything on social media, seeing what they missed out on.
Yeah,
But really, I mean, look at where you're going. You're like 1% of the population that can make it to that level,
that's it.
right?
And it's the things you do to get what you want, and that's what completely separates you from
Yeah.
everybody else that just wants to be there. So
So
yeah,
you become
I
this
loved it.
pro athlete, rugby player. I
Yeah.
laughed when I heard on a call you said I like to stick my head in places because you talk about your injury. Now you can explain that to the
Yep.
listeners.
Yeah, well, it's rugby league's a pretty brutal sport for anybody that has seen it. Certainly the distinction between rugby league and rugby union, there's far more high speed collisions within rugby league.
Okay.
There's been a lot of science and there's also a lot of changes within the game now, looking at CTE and the effects of that. But it's a far more collision bias sport. And I had this knack of somehow managing to always get my head round people's knees and elbows and shoulders and knocking myself out or them knocking me out. But it was a regular. It happened, and certainly when I was playing, the era was you got yourself up, you dusted yourself down. If you could
Yeah.
say your name, you carried on playing,
Yeah.
and that was it. And I bought the ticket, I played the game, and I loved it, and I loved every second of it. One day, it just got the better of me,
Yeah. So tell
and
us about that one day.
well, the kind of the funny thing about the whole situation was I'd played 2 seasons within the top flight and been okay. Yes, I took a few bangs, but I'd been fine. And it was actually a pre-season warm-up friendly game, and it was a charity game for a legend of the game who got really ill. So
Mm.
it was a nothing game in the essence of leagues or cups. It was nothing, and I played the game, and as I say, I had a habit of getting banged, and I did get dropped on my head this one game. Felt groggy, felt funny after the game, but yeah, that this is just what we do, and I'll be okay tomorrow morning. I woke up the next morning and things hadn't settled at all.
Mm.
Um, as a
You
young
actually went
kid,
home and slept
oh yeah, went
with
out,
the,
drove myself home,
oh my goodness.
drove myself home, went home, slept, didn't feel great. Debated the next day driving into the club because it was like a recovery session. But as a young kid, you do it, you get there. Like we've just said, the work ethic, the
Yeah.
discipline, like I will not be late. I've got to get in. Got in. And I actually somehow got through the training session. It was a light day. There was no catching and passing of balls. It was stretching and kind of recovery stuff. So I got through it. And after the session, I just pulled the club doctor and said, can you just check me again? Because there's something not right. And within 10 minutes, I was spinal boarded up, neck brace on, being rushed in ambulance to the hospital, to which found then that I'd broken my neck.
Wow.
And it was a long old road from there. Um, what we didn't know at the time was I'd damaged the arteries, the vertebral artery, which is the one that supplies the brain. I damaged that as well. So at the time when we thought it was a broken bone, things are okay. Like, yes, it's a setback. Yes, I will be out for a fair amount of time, but I will get back fit and I will play again. And that was the mindset throughout the whole time. Um, it was about 12 months. It was under the 12 months because I made the pledge that I would be back in under 12 months. So under 12 months, I did take to the field again. And within the first 5 minutes of the game, took a bang on the back of my head that was a completely innocuous challenge. Um, and within the game of rugby league, I don't know if people understand it, that the six tackles and the ball's kicked end to end quite a lot. And I was in the position that received the ball. The opposition kicked the ball to me, and I was a good 40 meters away from where the ball bounced, but looking as though I'm stood underneath it because I just had no spatial awareness. I didn't understand where I was. And I actually somehow collected the ball and just ran off the field, off the touchline, and collapsed because of the damage to the artery that we didn't know. The then impact kicked off all of the symptoms again, and that was then the road that then saw me 6 weeks hospitalized, learning to stand up again, learning to move around. It was horrible. It was
Yeah,
horrible, but
yeah,
we're
you're
here,
touching
we're
on
here, and we're swinging.
what's that?
We're here and we're swinging. So yeah,
Yeah, well, we're grateful that you are still here because, you know, in this conversation around life after sports, I mean, people leave due to injury, retirement, life happens, choice, or some unforeseen circumstance that forces them to leave or hang up their jersey. And in your case, it wasn't expected. It was quick, and you were 24. Talk to us about that immediate feeling. So I always think about the listener who's maybe gone through an injury or that can relate, or that suffering in silence piece that I find athletes go through during that transition. Jen, and you don't have to be an athlete to go through a transition. Any transition in life that you've
no,
done or that you've put your heart and soul into is gonna affect you when you leave it. For someone listening who has just recently been injured and going through it, can you share what you went through and what advice you would have for them going through it if you could do it differently or
yeah. Initially, I mean, I got told within the changing rooms when the doctors had seen what happened. I got told there and then that's you finished. You won't play again. Like there, from what we've seen, there's no way you. And at that point, it's just sheer denial. Like
yeah.
I'm telling myself that 12 months ago, there were doctors advising me not to play again, and I got back fit.
Mm,
This is just a coincidence that something has gone wrong again with my neck, and I will be fit. The problem was because of the state of the injury and the state of me, my body was not functioning at all. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't look at bright lights. I couldn't, I, and it took a few days, but then it turned into like, holy shit. Like I have no control over
you're
any
like,
of
this
this.
is
My my
different. Yeah.
my my brain is telling me we're like, let's just go. Like just get up and but I can't do anything. And then it turns into, well, where is everybody?
Mm,
Because the lads are at the club training
yeah.
because they have to be. And don't get me wrong, they were superb and they took shifts visiting the hospital and the staff were unbelievable. But the feeling is, where is everybody now?
Yeah. It's
And
like
and
you're
I
put out
kind
to
of
the pasture.
100%, 100%. It's just you're just on the heap. That's what you're telling yourself anyway. Like, and I kind of we talked before about the sacrifices of friends. You get to a point where that connection isn't there, so you then like, well, I can't even reach out to my old friends because now I'm only reaching out because I haven't got anybody else,
Yeah.
and what are they going to think of me? Will they even want to talk to me? Because really, my opinion of the only reason they've been my friends is because of who I was and the
Mm,
fact that I walked in a room and everyone saw me as I talk a lot. Everyone saw me as Sherlock. My rugby name was Sherlock. I was Sherlock to everybody, to the point that players didn't really know who the Tim Holmes was. They only
yeah.
knew Sherlock, and that was the mask I wore. Where's all that gone? Because I lost about 4 stone in weight. I was I was a mess in a bed, and I didn't have a clue. And as many athletes do who transition because of the discipline, because of the unrelenting nature of making it, you lose scope of anything else. And when it's taken, the feeling is, well, I don't know anything else.
Yeah.
People are telling me it'll be okay, but
You don't feel it.
well, I don't feel it. But they've all got jobs, they've all got families. I don't know anything but rugby, and now you're telling me I can't play.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking, and it genuinely feels like a loss because it's that loss of that dream. It's the loss of the identity and the persona of who you want to be. It's, you're on that trajectory, and suddenly it's
You're like this
shattered and
larger
gone.
than life personality and position, and people recognize you too.
That's it. And you almost view yourself differently. I always used to think you view yourself from like a third person as a player as well, that you're looking at what that player should be within the community, within the club,
Mm.
within a game, and it's gone. And it's tragic would be the word that I would put it down to. Um, and it takes an awful lot of soul searching.
And so for the athlete or the listener who's going through some transition and they're feeling lost in the soul searching, how did you return home to Tim from Sherlock?
Well, I didn't for a long time, and
Okay.
that's where we talk about the two phases. I straight away just flipped it to, well, I'll stay in the game. I'll
Mm.
apply what I know. I'll become a coach.
So you
To the
delayed
people
the
that are,
transition almost.
and I delayed it for years.
Yeah.
Um, to the people that are listening that maybe are going through this or have recently gone through this, my real advice now would be sit and listen to all
Mm.
that soul searching
Yeah.
and really dig down because, often people, alcoholics talk about hitting their rock bottom, and it's at that point that something has to change. It's similar in the sense that when you're at that point, there isn't anything that or anybody that is going to make yourself change or be better other than yourself.
Yeah.
And you can choose to sit and listen and figure out that path, or you can do what I did, which was completely ignore it and just shield it and say it'll be okay. I'll go this way.
Yeah,
And
it's interesting. Sorry, go on.
no, and I was just going to say, so I shifted my that relentless discipline nature
Mm.
just towards, well, I'll just be
Something
the
else.
best coach I can be.
Yeah. It's funny. We have different sets of athletes on here because some are sidelined forever in terms of they're now in a wheelchair because of an accident. Some go into coaching or they're a broadcaster or they found another career path that immediately they can use that personality. And then it's later on where they feel that transition. So I really liked how you talk about like you had to leave the sport twice. You went into coaching. It's amazing. I had never really thought about like that until I heard you say that. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. Um, but yet all
It's
those
the it
skill sets serve us so much in so many different roles, right?
completely, and it is because it's in our nature. It's what we do
Yeah.
to strive and be disciplined and to go after what you want, and that got me within a decent level of coaching.
Yeah.
Luckily, serendipity, whatever, the player welfare element got pieced into my role as I was coaching that I think helped me more than it actually helped the players because it
Mm,
opened my head, or so I thought. It gave me skills, let's say. But the problem is, you keep that identity. I was desperate for everybody to know me as
the rugby player.
Sherlock within rugby league. I just had to be a person of rugby league that people respected and held in high regard.
Yeah.
And it was only when the decision the decision to leave the club got relegated, and that it felt like this is your moment now. This is the moment to step back and take some time. The way I describe it, it was like stepping off a cliff
Mm,
because I walked out of the door and just felt like that machine is still going behind me. Those people are still going into work tomorrow. There's still going to be a game on that field next week. There's going to be someone else in my office.
Mm.
Where do again, like, what's next for me?
Yeah.
And it was the loss of, people talk about purpose, people talk about the why. Everything was in that building, was in that club, that unit, and it was gone. Um, and my what was interesting was my wife couldn't understand, because at the time the reason for me stepping away was I'm stepping away to, spend more time with the family,
Mm.
because sports all in. And yet she was saying, well, this is what you wanted. And
Yeah, you're
you
not
hear it,
happy at home now, right?
yeah, yeah. Like, why did you do it? If you said you wanted to be with us, you're with us, but you're
You're
not
not
happy.
really
And
with
I,
us.
I
Yeah.
and I desperately wasn't, because I didn't have that thing to apply myself to strive to be the best in their field at all.
Well,
And it was hard.
it's interesting because I feel like over my journey, there's many times where I felt like I meant for more. There's something missing, but what was missing, it took me to go. It took breast cancer to sideline me to the point where I had the realization that, holy cow, I've muscled my way through life. If I needed
Yeah,
validation, I did an athletic accomplishment. Marathon, sure. Half marathon, sure. Sprint marathon, I could do a figure show, sure. And then it was like I kept getting my pats on my back through that, but was really I was capped at to the level of which I could grow and evolve, and it's self-awareness, right? And then breast cancer. Well, I had to sit on my couch,
that
and
shocks
that's
you.
when I had to journal and meditate and really dive into that part of me. And through those transitions, though, like I know you talked about like depression and addiction and loss of identity, and I felt all of those. It felt like, there was different times where there were periods of too much drinking, and I don't even like saying that. It's embarrassing, but it is what it is, and it's so relatable. I mean, I can't. I was just at a funeral last weekend for another athlete that, unfortunately, that side of things had taken hold of him, his demons, and that's why I started this because there were a few athletes in addition to that one last weekend that they were found dead in their homes, and I'm like, these athletes are suffering in silence. Like we need to start
Yeah.
talking about it and bridge the gap. So, bringing it back to you and your journey, when you're feeling that disconnect, like where do you go? What do you do? Clearly, you're physically home, you're doing the things you want to spend time with your loved ones, but your head and heart are still in the game, in the locker room, on the team signing autographs. What do we do to get from there to there?
It's an awful lot of journaling. And like
Mm,
you said, it's self-reflection. It's digging deep into what was the part of the journey that you thrived on the most? What
mm.
was it that made you wake up? Because you know more than anyone, sport isn't enjoyable all the time. But when you're in it,
Yeah,
there's no other option. You get up, you do it. You play injured. You turn up when, work all the hours under the sun because it's what the team need. What was it that was making me do that? And it was the people. It was the lads I was working with. It was the lads I was working for. It was them.
yeah.
And then that led me to, well, actually, the stories that I've got, the experiences that I've got, I can still provide that help and that support and be around them and feel that camaraderie. I just got to do it in a different way,
Yeah.
in a way that, yes, my family are the most important thing to me. I need that flexibility in my life, but I also need that connection to other people and that striving that I'm contributing and
Mm,
helping somebody else maximize their potential.
yeah.
I said I only ever made the numbers up on a field, but what I did do on a field was always about
The
making everybody
team.
else look
Mm,
great.
yeah.
So how do we do that? And
Yeah.
and that was where the path started.
I love
Um,
that. I think what's
and
really important for anyone listening, it's easy to say just go journal, and it's always like, well, where do I start? I too have, I don't even know. I can see three or four journals on my desk right now in front of me, and I can see some in my bookcase over there, but It doesn't have to make sense. And I'd love to know if this was your experience, but like I literally had to either like rage on the page, get angry, get mad, crying. Some of it I doodled, some of it I just had to unload. And you had to keep, and it's funny, for a couple of those journals, when I reread it, it was the same freaking story
Yeah.
over and over and over again until it wasn't. But it was like an athlete, like I was willing to put in the reps, and it was like I had to undo this old vision and have the self-awareness of triggers and boundaries and how I showed up to different people in my life, or the party tricks that I turned on to be Janine, that person, and the many, like you talk about, take out your mask of Sherlock. I can so relate to that because I remember when I was journaling, it would be like I would talk to controlling Janine, and then I would talk to jealous Janine, and what about this part of her? And I always talk about the many faces, which we all wear, but when we understand ourselves, we can pull from that skill set. And it's like organizing it in your brain. So, did you follow a specific writing routine, or did you just free write? Because I always tell people, free writing was something that I just channeled what was coming through me. But did you have a specific framework, or were you just freehand as well?
So at first, no, I didn't. I did exactly what you said. Basically, somebody had said, try it. You've got to stick with it and
Yeah,
it'll come good. So I did. And I did the the stereotypical what I should be writing.
yeah. Whatever. What
But
in
the
case somebody
problem,
reads it, you wrote what in
yeah,
case
that's
somebody
it.
reads
That's it. And
it.
what I found I was doing was I was writing the
You're like
best journal.
validating your version.
Yeah. I was writing the best journal of how a journal should be written,
Yeah.
but it
Dear
was nowhere
diary.
near. Yeah. But if it was going to be published, oh, it was excellent. But it wasn't real.
Yeah.
So then
I
that
like
led
that.
me to the whole, well, this is a load of crap. Let's throw this out. And
Yeah.
I somehow stumbled onto someone who was actually giving advice on how to start journaling. And they said, if you've got children, write the letter to your children
I like that.
and leave a legacy, a lesson that they can read back and see that dad had these struggles, and dad's a
Some
real
things you don't want
person.
to be open about right away, right? Because you're
That's
embarrassed or you're
it.
shameful and you're like, I don't want my children being like this or reading this or
But I wrote it at first to validate because I knew mentally I wasn't in a great space,
mm,
meaning I wasn't handling being a father very well at all.
got it.
My daughter was so very young. There's no talking to a baby, is there? So
Gaga
it
goo
was a
goo.
way, yeah, exactly. So it was a way of me almost apologizing to
Mm.
her
But you're really healing
and then
yourself.
trying to work through why it had happened and explain why and write it as though I was and at that point then I was realizing, well, this is how you do it. Like
Exactly.
this is how you look at what you're doing and this is where you go. And it was only at the point of then reflecting back that then patterns started to emerge. And it's at that point
I'm
that it
thinking of
was then,
lessons for my kiddos. Can you hear them yelling on the rink
here we
behind
go.
me? I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah,
I'm like, okay.
brilliant.
I've got a
It's
lesson to write
brilliant.
about now.
It's
No, it's so
brilliant.
true. I love, and
But it is.
it's the trying to make the kid. I find that during the healing journey, and as athletes, because we're relentless and we're like, oh, I missed a shot or I missed whatever the catch. I'm gonna run it again,
Yep.
do it again, do it again. And we're so ingrained to like another rep, one more rep until you get it right. I can't leave until you know. And so like you keep coming back to it, but you're frustrated and you want to quit, but you know you can't quit. So that part of the athlete, I was able to channel into showing up for myself. And then it just became like, this is what I need to do to be the human that I want to be today.
To be the
But
human.
you
Yeah.
go through that muscling phase too of writing, I found.
And then and recently just what you said there about you muscle it through to be the person I want to be and to show the kids this is what I want to be. And the reps do it again. I would before a game, this is playing on a professional level, bearing in mind you train the day before with the team. I would take myself to the local park the night before, and I would be out there till I caught 50 balls on the bounce.
Wow.
One dropped, I would go again from zero till we got, and it was drilled. And all of the time, everybody around me was praising me for that.
Well,
And
of
then so
course.
then
Yeah.
when you dive back even more and you think, well, actually, when I was playing football, I would always stay mega late after training to to do more than everybody else. And that, and where I'm going, I think it led me to this. If I just work harder, it will come good.
Yeah. Well, it's
But in
funny you
this
say
realm,
that,
it isn't.
yeah, we would skate and then we would lift. Everyone would go home. I'd jump on the treadmill for an hour.
That's it.
And it was like I had stamina out the yin yang. Just my coach knew I could be sick. I could be half the level of athlete that I was, but I still had enough stamina because it was just, and I built that. I liked being that girl. I liked being the
But
one
yeah,
you could
there
count
you
on.
go. And
Yeah.
I bet you put then the superhero cape on
Yeah.
that even when she's sick, she can play.
Yeah.
Even when she's injured, she can play. She is the girl with the stamina.
Yeah. For
So
sure.
then I have to live up to that constantly, which then
Yeah.
means I need to be better than I was the week before. So the hour I stayed before last year, I need to be an hour and a half this year it, to validate who
Yeah.
I am
Well,
and
and then
who
it
the
for me
and
it was hockey, and then it was half marathons. Then it was a full marathon. Then it was a sprint try. Then I met these fitness competitors when I lived in Texas, and I lost 30 pounds in 8 weeks, and I won first
wow.
place. And it was just like it was. I was to the nth degree, and it validated me until I never. But because I could almost cloak it with, like you say, with her. See, you had to. Your neck was broken, which I would not wish on anyone. I had to go through breast cancer. I mean, it took me divorce,
Well,
bankruptcy, and breast cancer. So I
I
always
was
tell
going to
people,
say you've not had an easy ride, have you?
no, at all. But we're stubborn and we were locked into a certain vision, but like that's what forced me to sit back. And if you can become the self-aware athlete without having to go through all that adversity, which that's kind of hard too because you need the lessons. But um, I'm grateful. I'm really grateful I
Oh
went through
yeah,
all that hardship because I really like the girl that's on the other side now. And I thought the
totally.
athlete was pretty great, but the self-aware athlete, the disciplined, whether you're on the field or not, or on the ice or not, there's so much more to offer people around you too, right?
Totally. And I feel people talk about when they are their athlete living their dream that they feel invincible. I don't think I ever did. I think I was always on that tipping point of, am I good enough? Am I
Mm.
going to be okay?
Actually, you
However,
said something
now
about that in one of your interviews that I wanted to bring up with you. You talked about we're all constantly trying to prove ourselves to our coaches. So we don't really actually know if we believe the belief part. It was about
I
like,
believe
yeah, so it's like
I
some
put it
athletes.
down. So I talked to players about being about playing the game and being a player.
Mm,
We get selected because we play the game. Once we're selected and we turn pro, we adopt what we think a professional player looks like. Off the field, which is so important, and role models, yes, but not robots.
mm,
And when we get to the game and we play the game, we then become so reliant on pleasing coach to be picked to keep contracts that are we chasing contracts or are we playing the game how we naturally feel we should be playing the game? And I fell the other way, 100%.
yeah,
But when you watch sport, the true mavericks of the game are the people that do things differently, not wrongly, just
yeah.
different. And you think why? And it's because they're playing naturally as they should play the game. They're not falling
They're
into it.
like the child that's just out there doing the reps because they absolutely love it, right?
That's it.
They're not succumbing to the external pressure or what they think
That's it.
people want them
But
to
they
be.
don't, yeah, they're more bothered with pleasing
Yeah.
themselves than they are for pleasing others. And that's the bit. And on the other side of everything I've gone through now, where I do feel invincible and do feel bulletproof because now I've done that and I've been there and I've done the reps. Well, actually, anything that does come that is a failure that doesn't quite take off, well, it will come good because we've just got to work a little bit harder. But it isn't everything to me. What is everything to me is making sure that I can then turn up the next day in a good state to be able to help.
Yeah, I love
And
that.
and that's what's important.
Well, and I always talk about life's currency is showing up. It's not time or money. I don't mean physically showing up. I mean showing up with your full cup. So you took care of everything you needed to do for you, mind, body, spirit, and then now you're able to impart your wisdom and share and be part of a community, be a good neighbor, be a good coach, be a good parent because you've taken care of that piece. It's not just having time or money, right? It's really understanding what you need to thrive and then you can help others too and hold space for someone who's going through a hard time,
That's
sorry,
it.
right? And that's the important work, I believe, as a global community.
That's
Hence
it.
these conversations to help someone that know that they're not alone, and not if they're suffering in silence. We've a lot of us go through it. It's part of the process, but how do we help that next guy not stay down in the darkness?
That's it. And it isn't about pulling him out of the darkness or her out of the darkness. It's
Mm,
about saying the darkness you're in, I understand it.
mm.
And when you're ready to take a step, if you need to, I can support you. I think so much within the well-being and welfare space is going in to rescue someone. And
Yes.
you can't, you can't rescue someone.
Yeah.
They can come on a path with you that when you're trying to rescue them, but I don't believe it brings genuine change.
I heard there's a reference to a roller coaster with children, and it was like, we don't want to take our children off the roller coaster. That's their life. It's a roller coaster. We want to help hold their hand when they're on it, right?
100% love
So
it.
when I heard that, the way that was explained, I was like, oh, that's really good.
Love
Because
it.
it's so easy to go in and try to coddle and swoop in, right, with our children, rather than helping them teach and learn the lessons and giving them an emotional toolbox to be able to regulate their emotions and understand, like, oh, I just got triggered there about, I mean, the stuff that's going to happen in their lives. So I really like that, the way that you reframe that. Thank you. Um, in the context of this conversation around life after sports, and I mean, you're a father to two, you've got a wife, and you're doing the work now. What would be the biggest lesson that you would want someone listening to know in terms of transitions, identity loss as an athlete, um, and that reconnection with yourself so that you can step into this new version of yourself? What pieces of advice, if we didn't
Yeah.
touch upon, do you want to make sure that they're left with?
It's it's understanding who you are as an athlete to top and bottom. And that isn't what gets you onto the field, onto the ice. What, who are you? Who is that person? So many athletes that we talk to, I mean, we did it in the intro. Tim Holmes, a former rugby league player. Who are you? Well, I'm such a body. I play for. And it's often the first thing that comes out of people's mouths when
Yeah,
followed by the name,
yeah,
because that validates me straight away.
of course.
But actually, it's you then are just buying into this persona. You
Yeah.
are putting all those eggs in that basket that when that does finish, because it will, it's inevitable,
Hmm.
you then don't have, you've lost that sense of self so far. It's gone because you've never talked about yourself that way. So my advice would be to always check in and know who you are, be it through journaling, be it through the mindfulness or whatever it be, but find that joy that isn't associated to the athlete, to the identity, because it's only there then that you will then start to grow as a person outside of it.
Yeah, I
And
love him.
so many athletes talk, I'm a family man. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like
I always like to
to be
say
at the top
sports
of
are,
the game.
yeah, sports are what you do. They're not who you are, right? That's a saying that we always try to drill home. So I like that. I like that a lot. How would you tell someone to check in? Like that's great. Okay, Tim Holmes, who am I then? What would be the three things that you would have them write about so that they can walk away with an actionable item for them to check in with themselves? What do they need to
It
do?
would be it would be my go-to is journaling. It
Yeah.
would be going down and sitting down and saying to yourself every morning, what excited me about yesterday? What is my biggest challenge today? And how am I going to overcome it?
Yeah.
They
Or
would
what
be the
skill
three.
set do I need to improve upon or whatnot? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, because how am I going to overcome it often unfolds that, oh, well, I can't. Well, what do I then need to go away and work on to be able to do that?
Yeah.
Particularly from an athlete point of view, that can be rolled in with tough conversations with coaches, team members. Like, are there things going on within your sporting life that you you're just putting up with? How can you address those differently? How can you live within your true self? And that comes from talking to yourself.
Yeah.
I find the journaling is the best place to do that. People like to get out. I've watched a clip. Phil Foden, he's a top footballer here in the UK. He goes fishing. He sits there and to have those internal conversations because you need to create the space
Hmm.
to have that conversation with yourself.
I 1,000% agree. And it completely was my own experience and journey. The most important relationship of all is the one you have with yourself, understanding yourself, connecting with yourself. So I absolutely love all the information you've shared. It's hard to believe that almost an hour has gone by.
Is it really?
Yeah, I know
Love the
there's so
sound of
much
my own
great
voice, you
information.
see.
No, it's great. A lot of great information. A lot of great nuggets for anyone that's out there. And again, please reach out. How can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
Instagram is probably the best bet. That's where I'm most active on there. Homes from home, on Instagram or on LinkedIn as
Okay.
well. Just Tim Holmes on LinkedIn. Um, but by all means, I do say it an awful lot. Just opening up to have the chat, to ask a question. I make it my challenge to always get back to people and follow up with people properly because that chat often isn't just a thanks. There's often
Yeah.
a lot more, and we need to listen to each other a little bit more and really read between the lines without seeing it for a personal gain and listen to the person on the other end.
Yeah. I love that. Sage advice. Excellent advice. And one thing when we talk about journaling, so for the listeners that are trailing off and as we land the plane here, so to speak, on the conversation, I always say just keep showing up. So it's funny in the when you show up to write, it's like going to the gym. When we go to the gym, we don't know when we're going to get fit, but we know at some point or time we're going to eventually get fit if we keep going and being disciplined. That was my journey with journaling. It was like I kept showing up and then things got clearer and clearer and clearer. And then I got curious and then interested. And then now it's just part of who I am. But
Uh,
if you
Have you
just
heard
keep
the
doing the reps.
you've heard the phrase of eating the frog?
The what, sorry? Nope.
Eating the frog.
Eating the
So
frog?
eating the frog, it's a theory, it's a phenomenon that you do the hardest thing at the beginning of the day. The
Hmm.
stories back, they would do the hardest thing at the beginning of the day. The journaling is often the thing that can be just put aside. What you say about going to the gym, everyone dreads going to the gym, and there's ways of kind of manipulating it to get there. It's exactly the same with the journaling. Stick that journal in the bathroom, when you're going to go and brush your teeth first thing in the morning, when you go into the toilet first thing in the morning, stick it at the door of the bathroom. It's harder to then move the journal and not write in it than it is to ignore it,
Yeah,
to force yourself into it because you the repping is great, the discipline, but it will get dropped off if it's not done first thing.
I like that.
The positive side of it is once you've done it, it resets the lens for the day. It
Yes.
suddenly changes that look in that mirror that says, "Oh my God, do I really look this bad?" You've already had that conversation with how great you are and what you're going to do that day to overcome it. It
Yes,
changes the lens for the rest of the day.
I love it. Great way to end it too. Change the lens for the
Indeed.
rest of the day. Such great information. Thank you so much for coming on and thank you for your patience in connecting. Again, for those that are tuning in, this is episode 72 of Tiger Talk Thursday, transitioning to life after sports with former rugby league player Tim Holmes, formerly known as
There we
Sean.
go. Indeedy. No, thank you for having me. It's been great.
Awesome.